This happened to me when I was a teenager, probably around 14 or 15. Some background for this story. I hate clowns. I always have hated clowns, and I always will hate clowns. I'm not 100% sure why, but they creep me out and make my skin crawl. However, over the years, I've found this is a general consensus among most people, as I have rarely met someone who loves clowns. So, my friend and I had just finished watching a movie at the theater that was inside our local mall. The movie ran late and probably finished around 10 p.m. The mall had closed at 9 p.m., so it was dark and all the stores had their gates down, and it had a spooky enough feel about it. So we walked through the mall to the other side, which had doors. The doors were not locked from the inside, so we walked through the mall to the other side, which had doors closer to the trail we took to walk back home. Nothing was out of the ordinary about all of this until we got to our exit. Now, since this was the early 2000s, the mall still had payphones, and they were in a little foyer area. So there was one set of doors, then the foyer with the payphones, and then the second set of doors to the outside. We opened the first set of doors, and sitting in there was a fully dressed clown. I'm talking big, red, floppy shoes, comically oversized pants, stupid red nose, and face paint. This man in the awful costume was middle-aged, probably in his 50s. He was not on the phone. He was just hanging out in there. We hurried past him as I'm breaking out into a cold sweat and go through the double doors to the parking lot. And the clown guy follows us. I'm about to pass out and die at this point, since him just being a clown was creepy enough, but now he's also a middle-aged man following two 14-year-old girls outside. This adds a whole other element. He's calling out behind us and we are ignoring him. He continues to try to get our attention, and we start picking up speed. As he gets closer, I try listening to what he is saying, and he's literally just talking nonsense. I catch a phrase here and there. One of the things I can make out is him talking about how it's a full moon, and look how big it is. But he's talking to us, not himself. We make it to the other end of the parking lot, but this is the part where we head into the woods to cut through a trail to head home, so I definitely don't want this man following us into the woods. We made some sharp turns and hid behind a car, and after a while, we lost sight of him, and we hauled ass into the woods. Thankfully, we escaped unscathed, except for the creepy memory. So, creepy clown man who hangs out alone in malls at night, let's not meet. Years ago, I broke up with my ex, and it was at this time around Halloween. Now, I felt a bit lonely and bored and wanted to sign up here to tell a few stories to you, dear internet people. I'm in my mid-20s now, and English is not my first language. So, I was chilling in my room when my ex texted me. The text said, "Look outside," with a clown emoji. So I looked outside, confused and scared, and there were two masked grown-ass men in front of my window. I shat bricks. I was so scared that I got kind of paralyzed. As soon as they saw me, they drove off, never to be seen again. Of course, I blocked my ex and all, but he was in an asylum before, and I only knew this after our relationship. I was young and dumb, and took ecstasy, and this was how we met. He was my dealer, so maybe this wasn't even a good idea to even begin with. But I don't talk about it anymore, and regret it deeply. But I don't talk about it anymore. But now, back to the story. Then came Halloween a few days later, and another clown was in front of my window, jumped in front of a car. The brakes of the car sounded like it did in a movie. He then let a loud, recorded clown's laugh fill the empty streets. I don't know if he was even related to my ex, because in this town I lived in is a dump, and a popular trend is to dress up as killer clowns and scare people. Some people even got injured. Now, many Halloweens after, I still think about it. I've been scared since to even go outside this time of year, even when nothing else happened. I don't have anyone to talk about it to, because nobody takes it too seriously. and the police can't do anything without evidence. I don't want to meet any of these psychos ever again. I'm so scared, but at least my story may entertain you. Even though this happened when I was about 2 years old, I can relive it in my head like it was yesterday. This was also one of the first things I remember. I was at a family Italian restaurant with just my mom, as my dad was on a business trip to England. The memory is so vivid, I can even remember that it was a Wednesday night and that I had just finished my spaghetti. It was family night, and the restaurant had brought in a clown to dance and make balloon animals for the kids. He was over at the other side of the room doing a chicken dance with 5 or 6 other kids. I begged Mom to go dance with the clown, and she finally caved. I ran over there and started doing my thing, flailing my arms around, etc. But then the clown stopped dancing. He looked at me for a few seconds. At that time, I was unable to sense any malice in another human being, but his face burns in my brain. And after thinking about it as an adult, I'll just say, with the face he gave me, he wasn't going to just make me a balloon animal. After a few seconds, he walked calmly over to me and picked me up. He bounced me up and down a few times. After bouncing me up and down a few times to make sure I wasn't going to scream for my parents, he breaks into a sprint and runs out the door. Lucky for me and unlucky for Bozo, my mom had been watching me the whole time. She also happened to be a power lifter in high school and had also been kickboxing for years. She grabbed me and slammed his face off of a car door, but while she was checking on me, Bozo ran off into the night. I'll never know if it was just the chaos of the moment or fear, but for some reason, my mother did not call the cops, and I never saw him again. These days, I usually tell the story for laughs, or occasionally in a game of truth or dare, but I've never let my friends know that the story haunts me. I can't count the number of nights I didn't sleep, about how close I came to unspeakable things happening to me, how close I came to being found in a dumpster a few days after, how close I came to being another one of Bozo's young victims. As I get older, the more dangerous I realize the situation was. It's been 17 years since then, and I still think about it. On the plus side, he was the reason I took up martial arts, which became the love of my life. Obviously, I hope that I never see Bozo again. Dear Bozo, if you are seeing this, I'm the kid that got away. Let's not meet again, because if we do, you are going to get a lot more than a car door to the face. I don't know if many of you remember this, but back in 2016, there was a creepy clown trend where people dressed as creepy killer clowns and would hang out in places after dark or stalk people. My story takes place on my college campus during fall of that year. I lived with my grandparents before leaving for school, and I'm extremely close to them. Also, I am very shy and had 0 friends or people I regularly hung out with at school. I wanted to reach out and meet new folks, so I signed up for a salsa dancing club that met on Friday nights. I told my grandma over the phone, and she was happy I was putting myself out there. She asked if I was going with anybody. No, I told her. I'm just going to go by myself. Are you sure? She asked. Don't any of your roommates want to go? The idea of talking to my roommates terrified me. I could handle structured gatherings, but personal conversations left more room for my awkwardness to creep in. No, they're not here. I don't want you walking around campus by yourself at night, my grandmother told me. I thought my grandma was just being overprotective. Grandma, it's fine, the streets are well lit, and it's only a 10-minute walk. It's perfectly safe, my grandmother said. Well, if you're not going with anybody, call me and let me talk to you on the phone as you walk back. I agreed. That evening was incredibly fun, learning the basic steps and dancing to upbeat Latin tunes. At around 10:30, I felt ready to head back to my dorm, so I snuck out of the building and headed toward my dorm. Although the paved path I was walking on was lit by streetlights, it seemed darker than usual. In addition, the entire campus was deserted. Normally there were quite a few kids my age wandering around, but that night there was not a soul to be seen. I dialed my grandma and made small talk with her as I walked. I took my heels off and carried them in my free hand. Now, the path I was walking on went past a stretch of sidewalk that was perpendicular to the one I was taking. Under one of the streetlights, about 10 meters away, I noticed a lone figure standing with its back towards me. The figure, hearing me chatting on the phone, slowly turned toward me. He was tall and heavy-set, with wild red hair, and appeared to be wearing light blue pajamas. His face was obscured by a killer clown mask. The mask was stark white with dark black eye sockets and a twisted, malicious grin. Time seemed to suddenly slow way down. The clown did not move toward me. He simply stood there, staring. I knew I had to act fast. I contemplated my options. I could A. scream like a girl and run. B. approach him and confront him. Or C. pretend he didn't scare me. The entire moment I just described couldn't have lasted more than a second, but in the moment, it felt like an eternity. "Are you there?" I heard my grandmother say. Remembering to breathe, with the phone still in my ear, I decided to go with plan C. I broke eye contact with the clown. "So anyway," I said loudly enough that the clown would hear me. "Yeah, I'm on my way," I continued. "What's going on? Is everything okay?" I heard my grandmother ask, her voice suddenly filled with anxiety. As confidently and nonchalantly as I could, I walked past the sidewalk where the clown was standing, continuing to chat. His head slowly turned as I walked past, watching me until I was out of sight. I ducked into an archway of the nearest building and tried the door, praying it was unlocked. It was. Once I was inside, I slumped against one of the concrete walls and broke down into tears. I explained to my grandma what had just happened. My grandma yelled at my grandpa to dial the campus police on his cell phone so that I could stay on the line with her. I got up and started pacing up and down the empty halls, checking every door and window to see if the psycho clown had followed me. Was he just a stupid kid doing this on a dare? Or was he someone with more evil intentions? Some of the creepy clowns in the news had axes and baseball bats. I had no idea if mine was armed. When my grandma tried to explain to the officer on the phone what happened and that I needed help, he told my grandpa, "Your granddaughter needs to make the call herself." Apparently, the reason I had to talk to them was so that they could be sure the call wasn't just a prank or some stupid reason like that. The point is that they wouldn't take my grandparents' word that I was in distress. I would have to hang up with my grandma and dial the campus police myself. Not knowing if I would survive the night, I told Grandma between sobs, "I love you. I love you too." My grandma was also crying. I dialed the campus police and told them who I was and what had happened. The officer on the phone sent several other officers to find me while I stayed on the phone with him and gave him a description of the clown. As I was talking, I heard the door open. I froze. Was the clown here? Did he find his way in? A tidal wave of relief washed over me as several officers came striding down the corridor. They walked with me back to my dorm. As soon as I was inside, I locked the door and window and I shut the blinds. I called my grandmother back to tell her I was safe. After talking for a while longer, we said goodnight. Since then, I've made a few friends at school. While I'm in a better place now, I don't go out alone after dark anymore. And as for that creepy clown, let's not meet.